when something like Here with Hanks and Robin, you call a miracle. That's scary to me. That Robert Zemeckis, Tom Hanks, Robin, that's a struggle to get made.
Yeah, it's terrifying, but it's the truth. But it's terrifying.
Prepare your ears, humans. Happy, sad, confused begins now.
I'm Josh Horowitz, and today on Happy, Sad, Confused, Robert Zemeckis is here. He is responsible for some of the happiest film experiences of my life and probably yours. Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Forrest Gump. I'm going to throw A Death Becomes Her in there too because I'm obsessed with that one. His latest reteams him with much of the creative team of Forrest Gump, including Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. The movie is called Here, and it is, as much of his work is, groundbreaking, innovative, and deeply moving. I am so thrilled it's brought him on the podcast for the very first time. Welcome, sir.
Well, nice to be here. Thank you.
Uh, Congratulations again on the film, truly. We're on the eve of release. You've been through this 20 plus times in your career. Is it always a little bit of butterflies? I mean, you in your heart of hearts know when a movie is working, but you also never know how it's going to be received, I suppose. So take me through your
Yeah.
process now.
Oh, yeah, exactly. How'd you like it?
I enjoyed it. I loved it. I thought, like I
There you
said,
go.
very
Well,
moving.
hey, then mission accomplished. That makes me
One
feel
down.
one down, one down. But we'll take all of them that we can get. No, it's always great. Yeah, I mean, listen, the uh, this is part of the deal. You make movies and then you have to send them out into the world.
Yeah.
And you have to accept that as part of the very, very privileged position that you're in to be able to actually make movies. So that's you have to accept all of that as part of the deal.
This one again, as I said, innovative, truly like nothing that I've ever seen. I think anyone has ever seen. This has never been done. And there are very few filmmakers that can say that once in a career. And you probably can say it half a dozen times that you have innovated to the point where, like, literally it never happened that way prior. You must take a certain pride in that aspect of the career.
Well, yes, except that you have to. I do, and it's lovely to hear that, and I appreciate that. But that's not what said. I never set out to do that. I mean, it always comes from what I really start with in every movie, and I say this absolutely sincerely, is it starts with, hey, this would be a wonderful idea for a movie.
Right.
And it's a wonderful idea for a movie. And how can we really entertain the audience by showing them this story in a way that they've never seen before? So
Right.
that's how the process goes for me, because I think my job is I'm in a mass media art form. I'm in a mass audience art form, and I think that my job is to entertain. And one of the things that I think is entertaining is when you present something that's unique and the audience hasn't seen specifically before.
Right. It's a fool's errand to start with the tech and say, I want to try this toy out and then find the
Exactly.
story.
I've never said, I really want to make a movie with a steady cam,
Right.
right?
Here's the thing. One of the things,
But I'll use it. I'll use it if it improves the
of
scene, right?
course. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, okay, if you'll indulge me just on the innovation part of this and the uniqueness of how you're telling the story, it tickles me because knowing your work, I can't think of many filmmakers that are so audacious with camera moves, with moving the camera, with long shots, continuous takes. So it's like you have actively taken out of your toolkit a superpower. Are you a masochist? Because that's a huge thing to deny yourself as a filmmaker.
Well, yes and no. So first of all, when that was the graphic novel that Richard Maguire wrote,
Right.
that is what he painted. That was his vision. It would be horrible for me to like take that. Not it wouldn't work because it only works because of this idea that you're in this fixed view of the universe and
Yeah.
that everything moves before you. That's number one. Number two is the thing that you keyed into, which I after the fact, I actually chuckle about it, and I realized this when we were shooting the movie. I could not have made this movie as a novice filmmaker. If I hadn't done all those other movies with all those elaborate camera moves, I wouldn't have the tools to actually know how to do this, because this actually turned out to be maybe from a technical standpoint, the hardest movie I've ever made.
Well, it's so fascinating. Again, as I thought about this, like it puts so much of an onus, obviously, on staging, on where you're putting things, where you're putting your actors, and also putting a lot of weight on your actors who are kind of like framing themselves through the film. I really enjoy, like, again, we haven't really summed up the film, but like in essence, it is this one shot, most of it on a room, but through ages, through thousands of years, literally, and it definitely like tells the story of a family, but also several families. But keying in on Robin and Tom's story, that first shot of them, as I recall, when we see them very young, you kind of make a point of like letting them walk close to the camera. It seems like to say like, we got you. We solved this. They are young, and you will buy this. We figured out how to do it. Was that part in your brain a little bit?
Well, yes and no. I mean, but exactly. I mean, and and it was how I would have staged the scene in any other what we'll call normal movie with editing, if you will,
Right.
and other things that are tools of the language. But yeah, and the thing that's and the thing that makes it really work is the fact that the actors absolutely can walk into their own close up when it's necessary,
Right.
and then when it's not necessary, they don't. And so it's on the surface it might sound like, well, wait a minute, are you just filming a stage performance? No, because you can't walk into a close up in the
Right.
theater, right?
Right.
So it's
It's
very much cinematic.
100%. It's also fascinating. Look, it's for folks like me to look at the body of a career and see themes that recur, but you can't deny the theme of time throughout your work and of regret and of missed opportunities. I mean, this goes back for me, you think of It's a Wonderful Life. It all goes back to George Bailey and like making those compromises and kind of missing life or finding life. And that's the story that's recurred in like, Back to the Future through here. And, I could also cite time obviously being very important to A Christmas Carol, Contact, so many of your films.
Well,
Is that
Christmas,
something you're
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
the novel Christmas Carol, I think, is one of the first time travel novels ever written.
Right,
And It's a Wonderful Life is obviously a time travel story. I think the reason that I gravitate toward it is two reasons. One, um, I think the actual making of a movie, no matter what it is time shifting. That's what movies do. They
right,
tell stories. They tell stories by moving the audience through time. As a matter of fact, when you're editing on a editing machine, it's called a timeline. Is the cursor moves through a timeline, and so that's number one. Number two, movies do it better than any other form. A story that moves the audience through time is even if it's just a period movie and no and only stays in, like, say, 1750. Movies do that better than any other art form. And
right.
that's why I think I gravitate toward these stories, because they're just something that movies can do wonderfully.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are you scared by? Because for me, I've got a few, right? I'm scared of flying, I'm scared of spiders. I've got a list. We all have a list. The good thing about this time of year, I guess, is that Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is actually not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. I've certainly benefited from therapy, and friends and family have too, and that's why BetterHelp is such an important sponsor of Happy, Sad, Confused. Therapy can help you deal with those fears and those challenges in everyday life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It is designed to be convenient and flexible and suited to your very busy schedule. All you have to do, they make it so easy. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist. Plus, you can switch to your therapist at any time for no additional charges. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/HSC today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/HSC. I alluded to this in the intro, but it's a real treat to see Tom, who you've obviously worked with several times over the years, but also Robin. I know she was in Beowulf as well, but to see her in live action form here. And for those that don't know, Alan Silvestri, your DP, like you keep the company very consistent. So this is a big reunion. Eric Roth, of course. Just talk to me a little bit about, like, again, speaking of time, the beauty of kind of going on this journey and revisiting these folks years later and what it was like to kind of get the gang back together.
Well, Robin always said it the best. Hey, we're getting the band back together.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what we were doing, but we're playing a different song.
Right.
All right. So we're getting the band back together, but we're not playing the oldie. We're playing the new material. So that's sort of the way I would look at it. But it was fun working with everybody because we just know how we all work. And it's just great to work with people who you love to work with, and they know how I think and I know how they think, and it's a wonderful shorthand. That's why I keep all those people behind the camera close to me, because it's just lovely to be able to work with people who are really good at what they do, and you have a shorthand and you can just move along quickly.
If you'll indulge me going back, I mean, you're one of the few filmmakers I can probably say that I've literally seen every piece of their work, and multiple times probably. I guess Romancing the Stone would be a turning point for you. Is that the one that it was a box office success, so it earned you kind of like the right to get Back to the Future done? But one thing I read that I was surprised by, is it true that a cut of Romancing the Stone actually lost you a job, that you lost Cocoon because of the testing of that?
Well, yes and no. It wasn't a cut of the movie because it was actually kind of a sadder story than that. It was because for whatever reason, the people in the production department of 20th Century Fox back in those days they didn't like the movie we were making. They didn't like Michael producing it, the way he was producing it. They didn't like that we were down in Mexico, in their opinion, just doing whatever we wanted to do, So there, for whatever reason, they spoke very badly about the production. And unfairly. And I think that the producer of Cocoon was Dick Zanuck, who used to run 20th Century Fox and knew all these people. And they went to Universal and made a bunch of wonderful movies and came back, and they frightened him. They frightened him, and then of course he made this change before he saw my movie.
Got it.
And then he was very regretful for that. But
I'd imagine, yeah.
But we made up, So I mean, and it all worked out okay. But yeah, I did a lot of work on Cocoon. And here's the other thing that was great about I hired Ken Ralston, who was for many years did all my visual effects. We met for the first time on my prep of Cocoon. So that was like a great plus to have actually been involved with the prep of that movie, and then be able to hook up with someone who was able to like do so much for all these movies that I made after that.
Back to the Future probably comes up on this podcast as much as any film ever. And many, including me, kind of call it a perfect movie. Like on the one hand, I can count movies that are just that work on every conceivable level. You obviously have pride in it, but like when you look at it, like, are there things in it that you say, "Oh, I could have done that better"? There are flaws, or what do you see when you see that movie?
Oh yeah, no, you say that on every movie. I mean,
Sure.
but that's but yes, I think it would be I think it would. I mean, if I actually watched one of my movies and said absolute perfection,
Nailed it.
I mean,
Yeah.
what do I do then? I'd have to just be canonized, right? I mean, it would be like I wouldn't be human anymore. I would be
Right.
right. So, of course, there are flaws, but I can look at Back to the Future and go, yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. That works with.
Also, one thing I love, and I don't know if this was just happenstance of how it developed, when you look at that trilogy of films, I can't think of a trilogy where all three films are so different from each other. The second film is like Back to the Future on some kind of drug. It's on cocaine or something. It's manic.
Yeah.
And the third one is like wholesome and an homage and a love story. I guess how much of that was on your mind, or how much of it was just like it happened that way?
I mean, I'm sure I anyone who's a Back to the Future um, fan knows the story that Bob and I wrote one giant sequel,
Right.
which we then split in half. So the original movie that we wrote was going to be 3 hours long, and it was going to be what if you put part two and part three together, that would have been so it would have gone to the dark side, and then it would have like moved back to the wholesome side again. So,
Right.
but it was fun that we did three of them because it has a good trilogy energy, that
Yeah.
a three act trilogy drama to it. Yeah.
I love that you and Bob have protected it so fiercely over the years. Obviously, there's the musical, but you've never entertained seriously, as far as I know, a
Oh,
sequel,
never.
a
No,
prequel,
no.
and
We always felt that this was enough, and that it had to just live the way live with it being the three movies, and the
yeah,
musical is more of a companion to the movies
right,
than a remake of the movie, or it's sort of like it's a whole nother thing.
right.
And it just a celebration of the movie, basically.
So, have you had to actively though defend it? Because I would imagine, from like Universal's perspective, that's like leaving so much money on the table for them. They do they come to you and beg you every couple of
Oh,
years, like,
every 6 months. No,
yeah,
something. No, that's an exaggeration. Oh yeah,
but
oh yeah. Can't isn't there anything we can figure out to do here? Isn't there anything we can do? And we have to say, well, there are different things we can use that might work, something like that, but to remake the movie, or to uh, suggest that there's a Back to the Future 4, it it just isn't in the cards.
right. Good for you. Good for you. We're happy with the trilogy. Um, Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a formative film for me. I don't know how you got a PG on that film in retrospect. Jessica Rabbit, there's I mean, The Dip, Judge Doom. I mean, it's a film for all ages, but you probably are responsible for some psychiatric bills for some children, I would imagine. There's some damage in a good way.
Maybe but when I made that movie, look, the good news was that we were able to make it right at the time when Disney was ready to rebuild itself.
Right.
Well, we were there when the new regime came in, and they were full of energy, and they wanted to do. And then I kept saying, I sincerely say this, and I do believe this, and I say, I'm making Roger Rabbit the way I believe Walt Disney would have made it. And the reason I say that is because Walt Disney never made any of his movies for children. He
Right.
always made them for adults. And that's what I decided to do with Roger Rabbit. And the thing that you have to understand is, and this was funny because one time we did a a test preview with just moms and kids.
Right.
And I was terrified because I didn't, these kids were like 5 and 6 years old. They absolutely were riveted to the movie. And I realized that, the thing is, the kids get everything. They
Yeah.
understand it. They get it. You don't have to. I think the thing that I think the thing that Walt Disney never did was he never talked down to the
Right.
children in his movies. He treated the kids like they were adults.
Did you ever talk to like Nicholson or Polanski or any of the Chinatown folks about it's? I mean, it's obviously a riff on Chinatown. I didn't realize that at the time. I saw it before I saw Chinatown, but was that conversation ever had?
Not about. I've spoken to those guys, but we've never talked about uh, uh, Roger Rabbit. But you're 100% right. It was completely inspired by Chinatown.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah.
Jack came up in my research a few times as someone you've tried to work with. Is that true? You've
Oh
approached him a
yeah.
couple of times over?
Yeah. I tried to. I'd offer them things now and then, but I never. Actually, I offered. I actually offered the Bob Hoskins role to Paul Newman, and he was insulted. He was insulted by the offer because he said, I mean, he just said, "What, you want me to do a movie where I'm playing against a cartoon rabbit?" He didn't like it at all.
Amazing. Well, you got the right guy for the job. I mean, I remember talking to you many years ago, probably 12, 15 years ago about Roger Rabbit, and I asked you about the sequel question. And at the time you told me that there was actually the original writers had written a sequel that you were really excited about.
Yeah, no, there's a good script sitting at Disney, but here's the thing. Here's what you have to know, and you know this. The current Disney would never make Roger Rabbit today.
Yeah,
So they can't make a movie with Jessica in it.
right.
So there's very little. So the Seaman and Price sequel script isn't ever going to see the light of day as good as it is
Really.
because I mean, look what they did to Jessica at the theme park. They trussed her up in a trench coat, you know.
Can't show it.
Right, right, exactly.
Was Eddie Valiant in there? Obviously, we lost the great Bob Hoskins. Was there a way to include him?
Well, yeah, well, when the sequel was written, Eddie Valiant was a lot of the story was that Eddie was no longer with us,
Mhm.
but he would show up as a ghost, so, through in certain times. So, but now we would have to. I don't know. I guess we wouldn't be able to do it now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mentioned early on, Death Becomes Her. I have a very soft spot for. I think it's such a brilliant script from David Koepp and direction, performances. It's fantastic. Talk about like it's also a manic film. It's a wired movie, and I think of like Bruce Willis's performance. I feel like there are like double and triple takes from him as if he's in a Looney Tunes cartoon. Was that kind of like your directive to your actors? Like
Oh yeah.
how did yeah
Bruce. I mean, I would. So I would show up. I would show up on the set, and Bruce was already there, compounding out of his trailer. I said, Bruce. I said, you're here already? You don't work until noon. He goes, I've been here since 5 o'clock. I said, what's going on? He said, I'm just excited. I'm just excited. And Bruce was just loving the performance that he was doing. And so I just ran with it. I mean, I just thought it was fantastic. He
yeah
loved doing that. He loved, I mean, look, in his heart, he loves doing comedy more than anything. Right.
right.
Yeah.
That scene between him and Meryl and Sidney Pollack is an all timer. Like
It's just the best. I
it's the
know.
best. It's the best. Um, Going chronologically, I've rewatched your acceptance speech for Best Director for Forrest Gump, which, I mean, that's always going to be an emotional moment, but you received it from your mentor and friend, Steven Spielberg. Amazing. Was there ever any, like, ever a friendly rivalry with Steve? I mean, you
Oh, no,
guys,
here's the wonderful thing. Here's the wonderful thing about both Stephen and I. We know that we love each other's work, and we both know we couldn't make any of the movies that we make, if that makes any sense. I couldn't make the movies that he made, and he couldn't make the movies that I made. And so there's never been a rivalry. It's always been we're on our separate tracks and we appreciate everything. And I guess that's what makes our friendship last so long.
I don't know. I could see with all due, I mean, like, I could see a Robert Zemeckis Indiana Jones. There are a few in there I could.
It would be different. It would be
Yeah,
different. It would
yeah.
be. It would be.
Um, okay. Speaking of Indiana Jones, I think of Harrison Ford. You cast against type in What Lies Beneath, another film that I positively love. It seems like you were part of the mission statement there was riffing off of Hitchcock. Like, what would Hitchcock do in this scenario?
Well, well, yeah, of course, absolutely, and not, yeah, 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 definitely, definitely, doing it in a Hitchcock style.
Right.
That was the fun of it. Yeah.
Was there any difficulty at the time casting Harrison from his perspective or the studio? Because we'd never seen him up until then
Oh
be
no,
the bad guy.
he was all in. Oh no, he was there. He had no, oh no, he wanted to do it. Absolutely. Right.
I would imagine like any cinephile, you grew up with Hitchcock. There have been all these talks of and it's happened a few times of remakes. Have you ever entertained an
Oh
idea
no, no,
for
no, 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 no.
you would never?
I want to remake. No, 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 no. I'm good. I'm good. I no. I don't want to. I don't want to.
That's again a fool's errand. Why do that? Why invite that comparison? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, some rumor control. There are a few things I came across in research. It said that George Lucas came to you and a couple other filmmakers when it was time to make Episode One, The Phantom Menace. Did he come to you?
I can't. Maybe. Maybe. I don't remember. I don't. Maybe I don't remember. I really don't. He might have. He might have.
Okay,
But it was. It would have been such a quick and fleeting conversation that I don't remember it as anything that was a serious conversation about it. Let me put it that way.
got it. There was briefly talk that again talk about crazy things to remake, but Wizard of Oz. Did you consider
I
doing
was
a?
asked to make the Wizard of Oz way back as soon as Warner Brothers got the rights to that title, and I just said I don't I said I can't do this. I don't know how to I don't know how to improve that movie, you know.
Yeah, what are you trying to do to me? Like
Right.
seriously. Um, there have been at least a couple reported comic book films you said no to. Superman. I think you told me that actually once. Superman and The Flash in recent years. Uh, are there more I could count on one or two hands that you've said no to?
No, no. Well, yeah, I don't think my name's gonna come up in any comic book conversations, coming up.
Why is that?
Um, I don't know. I think the genre's been I think the genre's been, squeezed. It's squeezed out,
Yeah.
I don't I don't think I think it just kind of doesn't interest me.
Does it feel like, I mean, obviously, I know you said it and I listened to your Great Marin conversation, like the films you've made back in the day through now, like these movies are barely made now. And comic book movies, I think I like a lot of them. I'll say that, but they have taken up the space
Mhm.
of mass entertainment, action, adventure, fantasy, original IP. Is that your sentiment right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, of course, because they're marketable. So they
Yeah,
make them because they're pre-sold titles.
yeah,
So, and that's why when I was saying that on the Mark Maron podcast, the reason that my movies that I've made in my whole career, I mean, here is a miracle that it got
yeah,
made.
yeah.
It's an absolute miracle, and I am just so grateful that it got produced. But all my movies would not be made today because they're not pre-sold titles. They're not they're unique.
So where does that put you now as a filmmaker who's still pushing and wants to be creative when something like here with Hanks and Robin you call a miracle? That's scary to me. That Robert Zemeckis, Tom Hanks, Robin, that's a struggle to get made.
Yeah, it's terrifying, but it's the truth. But it's terrifying.
So
Uh,
so how do you climb that mountain again? Um,
because well, for better or for worse, you just have to do it
right. What's the alternative? Yeah.
because there's nothing else that I don't know what else I'm supposed to do because
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
um I the real honest answer to your question is I can only do what I've done on all the movies I've ever made,
Yeah.
which is if I fall in love with an idea for a movie, I just have to do whatever I can to get it made and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's all I can do.
What's the best script sitting on your shelf unproduced that if you could greenlight anything right now, you would do?
You know what? I don't have any. I don't have any.
Really?
No, I know. I've always been, I don't have one sitting there that maybe the Roger Rabbit sequel.
Right.
That might be the only one. But other than that, I've been fortunate enough to get the movies that I really, really love off the ground.
I'll end with this. You've accomplished so much. Is there a genre that you haven't tackled? Is there an actor you haven't worked with? I don't know if you think that way, but we've never seen the Robert Zemeckis full-on musical. There are innumerable amazing actors out there. What would you like to tackle before all is said and done?
Yeah, well, okay. Well, I would like to do the Back to the Future, the musical.
As a film?
Yeah, just like Brooks did the producers. I would love to do that. I think that would be great.
Robert, how have you tried? Where are we?
Yeah, I would try. Well, I floated that out to the folks at Universal. They don't get it. So nothing I can do.
Okay, we're going to put it out into the universe and try and make that happen for you. Sir, honestly, again, thank you for the time and thank you for all these films. They mean so much to me. And congratulations on here. It's great to see you pushing and working with the best in the business and making great work still.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a good one today. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay.
And so ends another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Remember to review, rate, and subscribe to this show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm a big podcast person. I'm Daisy Ridley, and I definitely wasn't pressured to do this by Josh.